Stop scrolling. This message is not random, and it is not for everyone. It is for you. If you're here, it's because God's message is activating your awareness right now, revealing why you were called, what this video is about, and why this moment matters. This is about the chosen ones, the unseen divine alignment guiding you here, and the prophecy unfolding through your generation. Stay with this, because what you're about to hear will explain the pressure you felt, the difference you couldn't name, and the purpose that refuses to let you look away. If your body went still instead of excited, that wasn't curiosity, it was recognition. Recognition is calm. It feels like memory returning, like something ancient inside you saying, "This is it." That's how God's message moves. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't compete with noise. It arrives with weight, with timing, with precision, when the soul is ready and the mind can no longer resist. This video is about why this message found you, what's awakening inside you, and why you must hear this now, all the way to the end. You are not here by accident, and you are not here because you are lost. You are here because your generation is living inside a long-spoken prophecy, and something within you knows it. History moves in cycles, but destiny moves in appointments. There are moments when truth must re-enter the world through people who can carry it without distortion. Those people are never random. They are refined before they are revealed. They are isolated before they are activated, and they recognize the call before they understand it. This message is for the chosen one who has felt different without being able to explain why, for the one who felt pressure before purpose had language, for the one who sensed responsibility long before recognition arrived. Your path has never followed the shallow rhythms of the world, because it was never meant to. That discomfort you felt in places where others felt comfortable was not weakness. It was alignment pulling you away from timelines that could not hold your divine purpose. Your generation was not born into ease. It was born into transition. Old systems are cracking. Old truths are being exposed. Old identities are dissolving. That is not chaos without meaning. That is prophecy unfolding. Every era that carries renewal must first endure collapse, and every prophecy requires carriers who can stand steady while everything else shakes. That is why your life has felt heavier than expected. That is why shortcuts never satisfied you. That is why something inside you kept saying, "There is more, and you are responsible for it." God's message does not always arrive with comfort. Sometimes it arrives with clarity that disrupts illusions. Sometimes it arrives to remind you that the war is real, not a war of weapons, but of truth, attention, and consciousness. A war between what numbs and what awakens. And your light is not optional in this moment. It is necessary. That is why resistance appeared early. That is why delay shaped you. That is why you were trained in silence rather than celebrated in noise. If this resonates, it is not because you are being convinced. It is because you are remembering. Divine alignment does not feel like persuasion. It feels like confirmation. If you feel aligned with what is being spoken here, take a moment and comment 777 below. Not for validation, but as a signal to yourself that you recognize the call. Now circle back with me to the beginning. This is God's message. You are not imagining the pull that brought you here. You are not overthinking the weight you have carried. You were called, and the calling did not expire just because you tried to ignore it. The pressure you felt was not meant to break you. It was meant to prepare you. The resistance you faced was not punishment. It was refinement. And the light you carry is not symbolic. It is functional. It is needed now. Your generation is not here to escape the world. It is here to stabilize it. Not through noise, not through superiority, but through embodied truth, through calm authority, through lived wisdom, through showing what alignment looks like in real life. This is not about being special. It is about being responsible. If this touched your soul, if something inside you feels steady instead of excited, comment 111, because you know it. You were called. The ancient prophecy about your generation. From the beginning of time, every major spiritual shift has been preceded by a generation that did not quite fit into the world it was born into. This is not new, and it is not random. Before renewal ever arrives, there is always a chosen generation prepared to carry the weight of transition. That is the pattern written into history, scripture, and consciousness itself. And that is why this moment feels familiar to your soul, even if your mind cannot explain it yet. This is not trend, hype, or spiritual fashion. This is prophecy unfolding again through your generation. Prophecy is often misunderstood because people associate it with fear, collapse, or punishment. But true prophecy is not about destruction. It is about preparation. It reveals what must change and who must be ready to carry what comes next. When an era reaches the limits of its integrity, truth does not disappear. It relocates. It moves into people who can live it, protect it, and transmit it forward. That is where the chosen one emerges, not as a savior but as a stabilizer. Look closely at the spiritual conditions of the world right now. Noise everywhere, but little wisdom. Information everywhere, but little truth. Connection everywhere, but little meaning. This is not accidental decay. These are the exact conditions described across ancient teachings when an awakening generation begins to stir. Systems grow loud when they are hollow. Illusions multiply when truth is scarce, and sensitivity rises in those who are meant to restore balance. That sensitivity you feel is not weakness. It is tuning. Your generation was born into collapse, not to be crushed by it, but to stand between what is ending and what must be rebuilt. You are the bridge generation, too awake to fully belong to the old world, too early to see the new one fully formed. That in-between space feels heavy, isolating, and often misunderstood. But it is sacred ground. Bridges are never destinations. They are passageways, and passageways carry responsibility. This is why many chosen ones feel pressure without explanation, why comfort never fully satisfies, why distraction eventually feels painful instead of pleasant. Prophecy does not activate ease first. It activates awareness, and awareness carries weight. It asks you to see what others avoid, to feel what others numb, and to remain grounded while others escape. That is not a curse. That is divine purpose revealing itself slowly, carefully, so it does not overwhelm you before you are ready. This prophecy is not about predicting dates, announcing dramatic endings, or feeding fear about what is coming next. It is about awakening people who can embody truth in unstable times, people who can live with clarity when confusion is rewarded and integrity feels rare. It is about restoring wisdom through lived example, not loud declaration, not arguments, not performance. Your generation is not called to burn the world down or reject everything that exists. It is called to hold a steady flame while the world forgets how to see clearly, to remain grounded while others panic, and to carry truth patiently until it becomes visible again. That is why your path has required patience when others moved quickly. That is why shortcuts never worked for you, even when they seemed easier. That is why your growth happened internally, long before anyone else could see it. You were being built from the inside out, because what you are meant to carry cannot rest on unstable foundations. Circle back to the beginning and hear this clearly, without doubt or hesitation. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the sense that something important is unfolding beneath the surface of your life. You are not forcing meaning onto random experiences. You are not alone in sensing that this moment carries weight. You were called because the moment requires people who can stand awake inside it. The war is real, but it is not fought with anger, outrage, or constant reaction. It is fought with clarity when confusion spreads, with integrity when compromise is rewarded, and with presence when distraction dominates. It is a war between truth and distortion, depth and distraction, consciousness and collapse, and it is won quietly by those who refuse to abandon themselves. Your light is not symbolic or poetic. It is functional. It changes the atmosphere of rooms without effort. It steadies conversations. It disrupts falsehood without confrontation. It reminds others of who they are without needing to explain anything. That is why it had to be refined before it was revealed. That is why you were shaped in silence, patience, and inner testing. Prophecy does not rush its carriers, because rushed light flickers. True light is trained to endure. It is prepared thoroughly so it can remain steady when the world needs it most. You are not late. You are not early. You are exactly where you are meant to be. Your generation carries the assignment of transition, and the chosen one carries the responsibility of embodiment. This is not about being elevated above others. It is about standing steady when others cannot. And if this truth touched your soul, if something inside you feels calm and confirmed rather than excited, comment 111, because you know it. You were called. Why you always felt different before you understood. Long before you had words for it, you felt it. A quiet sense of being out of place. Not because you were lost, but because the environments around you felt misaligned. You could sit in rooms full of people and still feel separate, not superior, just different in a way that was hard to explain. That difference was never social, it was spiritual. It was the early signal of a chosen one awakening inside circumstances that could not yet support it. You noticed it early. Shallow goals felt empty to you, even when others chased them with excitement. Praise felt temporary. Distraction felt dull. There was always a question under the surface of your life, a sense that something meaningful was expected of you, even when no one had placed that expectation there. That pressure did not come from comparison. It came from divine calling, moving quietly before identity caught up. Many chosen ones spend years thinking something is wrong with them. They try to fit, to numb, to shrink their awareness so life feels simpler. But the discomfort never fully leaves, because it is not anxiety. It is alignment knocking. When you carry divine purpose, confusion often arrives before clarity. Not because you are failing, but because preparation always feels disorienting before it becomes empowering. You sensed responsibility long before you were given direction, and that was never accidental. You felt accountable for things you could not yet explain, as if something larger than your personal life was quietly watching how you responded to the world. You noticed injustice where others stayed comfortable, emptiness where others felt entertained, and falsehood where others accepted convenience. And it weighed on you, not because you were fragile, but because you were aware. That sensitivity was never emotional weakness. It was spiritual tuning. The chosen one is wired to feel what others ignore, to register imbalance before it becomes visible, because awareness is the foundation of responsibility. You were designed to sense truth early, so you could one day help stabilize it. This is also where many misunderstand spiritual awakening. They expect spectacle, instant transformation, or a dramatic new identity that replaces the old one overnight. But true spiritual awakening is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who you have always been beneath conditioning, fear, and borrowed expectations. Awakening does not feel foreign. It feels familiar. It feels like truth settling back into its rightful place, like tension releasing from your body because something finally makes sense. Instead of excitement, there is clarity. Instead of chaos, there is quiet recognition. It feels less like discovery and more like coming home to yourself. Your confusion was never a sign that you were behind or lost. It was evidence of refinement happening beneath the surface. While others were distracted by noise, approval, and constant stimulation, you were being taught discernment, patience, and depth. You were learning how to sit with discomfort without running from it, how to question without becoming cynical, and how to listen inwardly instead of chasing validation. You were being trained to carry weight without needing applause, to hold responsibility without needing immediate recognition. That is part of the divine calling and chosen one path. It builds internal strength before external confirmation arrives, because confirmation without foundation would collapse you. What felt like delay was actually protection, and what felt like uncertainty was preparation for the clarity you are now beginning to step into. Circle back to the beginning and hear this clearly. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the sense that your life has always been guided by something deeper than circumstance. You were not behind. You were being positioned. The war is real, not a war of violence, but of consciousness. A war between truth and distortion, meaning and emptiness, presence and escape. And your light is necessary in this moment, not later, not when you feel ready, but now. Your light was not designed to blend in. It was designed to reveal. That is why it felt heavy before it felt clear. That is why you walked paths that felt lonely. You were learning to stand without external validation, to trust inner alignment over outer approval. That strength is not accidental. It is required for what comes next. You were called long before you understood the call. You were shaped before you were named. And if this truth touched your soul, if something inside you feels steady and confirmed rather than excited, comment 111. Because you know it. You were called. The spiritual awakening happening in your generation right now. What you are experiencing is not isolated, and it is not accidental. Spiritual awakening is accelerating within your generation because the conditions of the world no longer allow unconscious living to remain comfortable. This is how awakening works. It does not begin with peace. It begins with pressure. It begins when what once distracted you stops working, when what once satisfied you starts to feel empty, and when pretending becomes more exhausting than facing truth. That shift you feel inside is not instability. It is alignment activating. Your generation is awakening faster because it was born into contradiction. You were raised with access to everything, yet meaning felt scarce. You were shown endless options, yet few of them felt real. That tension was not meant to confuse you forever. It was meant to wake you up. Spiritual awakening often begins as restlessness, a subtle inner agitation that says, "This cannot be all there is." You feel it in your body before you understand it with your mind. A loss of tolerance for shallow conversations, a resistance to false goals, a growing hunger for something real, grounded and true. Sensitivity is increasing, and many mistake that for weakness. But sensitivity is awareness sharpening. You notice energy, intention, and truth more clearly now. Crowded spaces feel heavier. Empty words feel louder. False paths feel unbearable. This is not because you are becoming fragile. It is because your perception is becoming refined. Awakening heightens contrast. What is aligned feels calming. What is misaligned feels draining. That discernment is a sign of growth, not imbalance. This stage often feels heavier before it feels empowering, and that confuses many people. They expect spiritual awakening to feel like relief right away, but awakening first removes illusions. It strips away numbness. It asks you to feel what you once avoided. That can feel overwhelming if you do not understand what is happening. But heaviness is not regression. It is detox. It is truth re-entering places where denial once lived. This is where God's message becomes important. You are not broken. You are not losing your way. You are responding correctly to a world that has drifted far from meaning. The prophecy never said awakening would be comfortable. It said it would be necessary. And necessity carries urgency, not panic, but purpose. Your generation is awakening because the old ways cannot hold the future that is forming. Circle back to the beginning and hear this clearly. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the intensity of this inner shift. You are not exaggerating the weight you feel. You were called into awareness because unconsciousness can no longer sustain the world. The war is real, not a war of violence, but of attention, truth, and presence. A war between depth and distraction, integrity and illusion. And your light is necessary, not as noise, but as steadiness. Awakening is not about escaping life. It is about engaging it more honestly. It is about choosing meaning over numbness, truth over convenience, and responsibility over avoidance. Your generation is not awakening to dominate the world. It is awakening to stabilize it. That requires grounded people who can feel deeply without becoming lost, who can see clearly without becoming bitter, who can stand firm without becoming rigid. Your light is being activated because darkness thrives on confusion, not because darkness is stronger, but because awareness has been dormant. Awakening restores balance. It does not create chaos. The chaos you see is the resistance of systems that can no longer survive unconscious participation. You are not here to fight blindly. You are here to embody clarity. This is why you are feeling called inward before being called outward. Alignment always begins internally. Power without grounding destroys. Awareness without discipline overwhelms. That is why this process feels slow, heavy, and deliberate. You are being prepared to carry truth without distortion. If this touched your soul, if something inside you feels calm and confirmed rather than excited, comment 111. Because you know it. You were called. Why the chosen ones face resistance, delay, and isolation. If you are a chosen one, your path was never meant to be easy, fast, or widely understood. That is not a flaw in the design. It is the design itself. Those carrying divine purpose are refined through pressure rather than comfort, because comfort does not build discernment, strength, or clarity. Ease can hide truth. Pressure reveals it. This is why resistance appeared early in your life, often before you even understood who you were becoming. Delay is one of the most misunderstood tools in the divine calling and chosen one path. Many assume that if something is meant for them, it should arrive quickly, but speed builds ego, while delay builds depth. You were slowed down so your character could catch up to your calling. You were held back so you would not step into responsibility without stability. What felt like being overlooked was actually protection. What felt like stagnation was preparation. Isolation is another refinement that confuses many chosen ones. You were not isolated because you were unworthy of connection. You were isolated because constant noise would have distorted your inner guidance. Solitude teaches self-trust. It removes dependence on external validation. It forces you to hear your own conscience, your own intuition, your own alignment. Separation precedes assignment because clarity must come before contribution. Misunderstanding is also part of the path. When people cannot see your internal work, they often mislabel your quiet as weakness, your restraint as fear, your patience as lack of ambition. But the chosen one does not rush to be understood. They understand themselves first. Recognition that arrives too early can corrupt purpose. That is why your progress has often been invisible to others, while it felt intense inside you. Resistance is not evidence that you are on the wrong path. It is confirmation that you are walking towards something meaningful. Anything without value is rarely opposed. Pressure appears where purpose exists. This is not punishment. It is refinement. The divine does not waste resistance on random lives. Resistance sharpens discernment, builds resilience, and teaches you how to stand firm without becoming hard. Circle back to the beginning and hear this truth again. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the weight you have carried or the obstacles that appeared without explanation. You were called, and calling attracts testing. The war is real, not a war against people, but against confusion, distraction, and distortion. A war where clarity is the weapon and integrity is the shield. And your light is necessary, not loud, not dramatic, but steady. Your light has been trained under pressure, so it would not flicker when challenged. That is why shortcuts failed you. That is why false paths collapsed quickly. That is why comfort never fully satisfied you. You were being taught to rely on alignment instead of approval, on truth instead of timing, on purpose instead of popularity. Delay does not mean denial. Isolation does not mean abandonment. Resistance does not mean rejection. These are signals that you are being shaped for something that requires stability, humility, and strength. When the assignment arrives, you will understand why you could not have reached it sooner. The weight of responsibility demands a solid foundation. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not forgotten. You are being prepared carefully, intentionally, and thoroughly. And if this truth touched your soul, if something inside you feels steady and confirmed rather than emotional or excited, comment 111. Because you know it. You were called. Your divine purpose is not random or small. At some point, identity must mature into responsibility. Knowing you are a chosen one is not the destination. It is the beginning of accountability. Divine purpose was never meant to inflate ego, create superiority, or provide escape from struggle. If anything, true purpose demands more discipline, more integrity, and more humility than an ordinary path. This is where many misunderstand the calling. Purpose is not about being elevated above others. It is about being entrusted with something others are not ready to carry. Your divine purpose is not random, and it is not small, but it is also not loud. It does not need constant announcement or external validation. The prophecy surrounding your generation does not call for spectacle. It calls for restoration. Restoration of truth in a world addicted to distortion. Restoration of stability in a time addicted to chaos. Restoration of wisdom in an age that mistakes information for understanding. These restorations happen quietly, through embodied people, not dramatic performances. This is why you were trained inwardly before being positioned outwardly. Loud spirituality without grounding creates confusion, not clarity. Power without discipline creates damage, not healing. The chosen one is not here to escape the world's problems, but to move through them with steadiness, to bring calm where others bring reaction, to bring truth where others bring opinion, to bring structure where others bring noise. Your generation has been called because it can no longer afford unconscious leadership. The old ways of authority have failed. The prophecy points to people who lead through example rather than dominance, through integrity rather than image. That is why your development has focused on character instead of recognition. You were being taught how to hold responsibility without becoming rigid, how to stand firm without becoming arrogant. Divine purpose often feels heavy because it carries consequence. Your words matter. Your presence matters. Your choices ripple outward, even when you are not trying to influence anyone. That is why shortcuts collapsed for you. That is why dishonesty felt unbearable. That is why compromise always came with an internal cost. These were not inconveniences. They were training signals. Circle back to the beginning and hear this clearly. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the sense that your life is meant to stand for something real. You were not given this awareness to feel special. You were given it to be responsible. The war is real, not a war of violence, but of truth versus distortion, wisdom versus impulse, depth versus distraction. And your light is necessary, not as a spotlight, but as a stabilizing force. Your divine purpose will express itself through consistency, not bursts of intensity. Through integrity when no one is watching. Through discipline when excuses are available. Through embodiment rather than explanation. This is how prophecy fulfills itself. Not through grand announcements, but through people who live differently enough to shift environments naturally. You are here to restore trust in what is real, to remind others of truth without forcing it, to anchor stability simply by being grounded. That may not look impressive to the world, but it is essential to its survival. Small actions, when aligned, carry enormous weight. Quiet lives, when integrated, hold entire systems together. This is not the time to shrink your responsibility or exaggerate your importance. It is the time to embody your role fully, calmly, clearly, without fear, without urgency. Purpose unfolds through patience. Impact unfolds through presence. And legacy unfolds through consistency. You are called because you can carry this without needing applause. You are shaped because you can hold this without collapsing. And if this truth touched your soul, if something inside you feels steady and confirmed rather than emotional, comment 111. Because you know it. You are called. What happens when you accept the calling fully? There is a moment when resistance ends, not because life becomes easy, but because confusion finally dissolves. When a chosen one accepts the calling fully, something subtle but irreversible shifts inside. The noise quiets. The inner debate softens. You stop asking who you are meant to be and start living from what you already know to be true. This is not a dramatic transformation. It is a grounded arrival. Acceptance does not inflate you, it steadies you. Calm authority begins to replace urgency. You no longer feel the need to prove, explain, or rush your path. You move with clarity because your energy is no longer split between becoming and avoiding. This is the hallmark of divine calling and chosen one alignment. When the calling is accepted, your inner world organizes itself. Values become clear. Boundaries become natural. Decisions become simpler, not because options disappear, but because alignment chooses for you. Life begins to align internally before it aligns externally. This is important to understand. Many expect acceptance to immediately change circumstances, But the first alignment happens inside your nervous system, your conscience, your sense of direction. You feel less reactive, less scattered, less pulled by what does not matter. Challenges still exist, but they no longer confuse you. They become instructions instead of obstacles. Acceptance removes confusion, not difficulty. This is where spiritual awakening matures into embodiment. Awakening without acceptance can feel chaotic, emotional, and overwhelming. Acceptance brings integration. You stop fighting who you are. You stop negotiating with your purpose. You stop waiting for permission. And because you are no longer divided, your energy becomes coherent. People feel that, rooms respond to that. Life responds to that in time. God's message was never meant to excite you temporarily. It was meant to orient you permanently. When you accept the calling, you no longer need constant reassurance. You trust the process, even when progress is quiet. You stop measuring your worth by speed or visibility. You understand that what you are building requires stability, not spectacle. Challenges do not disappear, but they lose their power to derail you. Fear no longer drives your decisions. Comparison no longer dictates your pace. You still feel pressure, but it sharpens rather than overwhelms. This is the grounded strength that emerges when acceptance replaces resistance. You become harder to manipulate, harder to distract, harder to discourage, not because you are rigid, but because you are clear. Circle back to the beginning and hear this truth again. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the shift you feel when you stop running from what you know. You were called, and calling answered brings peace that circumstances cannot provide. The war is real, but when you accept your role, you stop fighting blindly. You fight by standing steady, by choosing truth over reaction, by choosing presence over panic, and your light is necessary, not because it flashes, but because it endures. Acceptance does not make you passive. It makes you precise. You act when it is time. You rest when it is wise. You speak when it is necessary. Silence becomes a tool, not avoidance. Action becomes intentional, not impulsive. This is what alignment looks like in real life. You no longer wait for life to give you permission to be yourself. You stop asking whether you belong. You know you do. Not everywhere, not with everyone, but exactly where you are meant to serve. That knowing brings a quiet confidence that does not need validation. And if this touched your soul, if something inside you feels calm, settled, and confirmed rather than emotionally charged, comment 111 because you know it. You were called. Confirmation, blessing, and final alignment. If this message resonated with you, understand this clearly and calmly. It is confirmation, not coincidence. Truth does not strike randomly. God's message arrives where there is readiness, not curiosity. What you felt while listening was not emotional suggestion. It was recognition settling into place. Alignment feels like remembering something you always knew, but could not yet name. That is how confirmation works. It does not shout. It stabilizes. You are part of your generation that carries this prophecy forward, not through urgency or fear, but through embodiment. The prophecy was never about dramatic endings or sudden rescue. It was about people who could stand steady when others panic, who could hold truth when others fragment, who could move with integrity when shortcuts are everywhere. That is why this message did not rush you. It met you where you are and invited you to stand there with confidence. Chosen one, your role is not to hurry the future. It is to live correctly in the present. Steady embodiment does more to shift the world than frantic action ever could. When you live aligned, you give others permission to do the same without forcing them. This is how divine purpose fulfills itself quietly and effectively. The world does not need more noise. It needs grounded people who know who they are and do not abandon that under pressure. If you feel aligned with what has been spoken, take a moment and comment 777. Let it be a marker, not for anyone else, but for yourself. A signal that you recognize where you are standing now. Alignment acknowledged becomes alignment embodied. This message was not meant to elevate you above others. It was meant to anchor you within yourself. God's message carries responsibility alongside reassurance. You were not called because you are better. You were called because you are capable of holding weight without losing compassion, clarity without arrogance, and purpose without panic. That balance is rare, and it is needed now. Circle back to the beginning one last time and hear this without doubt. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the pull that brought you here, or the calm that followed. You were called because the moment requires people who can see clearly and remain grounded. The war is real, but it is not fought with fear. It is fought with presence, with truth lived consistently, with light that does not flicker under pressure. Your light is necessary, not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect. Now, necessary in how you speak, how you choose, how you remain honest when distortion is rewarded. Necessary in your restraint as much as your action. Necessary in your discipline as much as your compassion. This is what alignment looks like when it matures. There is no rush. There is no race. Prophecy unfolds through patience. Divine purpose expresses itself through consistency. Stay grounded. Stay clear. Stay embodied. Let life meet you where you are, rather than chasing what you think should come next. Alignment attracts what belongs without force. And if this touched your soul, if something inside you feels steady, awake, and unmistakably confirmed, comment 111, because you know it. You were called.